Greetings, YouTube, and welcome to episode 63 of the 4,000 Question Challenge. Would you rather be caught naked by a friend or a stranger? By a friend, I guess. What friend taught you an important lesson about life? My wife. Okay, now we have one of those group questions where each one starts with a lead-in and then has a follow-up section. So the lead-in for the section right here is, have you ever? Okay, have you ever stopped speaking with your parents for a long period of time? Yes. Have you ever blamed your parents for your own flaws? That implies that you had flaws that had nothing to do with your parents, yet you blamed them without just cause for those flaws, as opposed to what I think is the far more likely situation, is that you have flaws because of how you were raised. So I have justifiably blamed my parents for a number of flaws I have. For example, most of my mental health problems because they were crappy parents when I was growing up. Come on, cat, out of my way. You're making this a little harder than it needs to be today. Alrighty. Have you ever told a friend or family member what you honestly think of him or her? Not often. I think it's happened a couple of times. I did have a coworker once ask me about that, and I begged off twice. And when she asked me the third time, I told her she didn't like the answer. Have you ever forgiven someone who hurt you? Yes. Have you ever had a friend who became like a member of your family? Yes. Have you ever had to make a great sacrifice for a relative? Great sacrifice for a relative? My mental and emotional well-being for my parents, for them to maintain the narrative of their own identity? Yeah. Okay, so now we're back into just ordinary questions. When I am in a large group, depends on the circumstances. Sometimes I can talk to a large group of people. Sometimes I would be more common talk to a single person or a small group of people. Depends on my mood. We are never just one thing. What family or person you know seems genuinely happy? Okay, now let me think about the people I know. Who seems genuinely happy? I gotta be honest. I know that many people are genuinely happy at times, but I don't know anyone that is genuinely happy all the time. None of my friends or family are Buddha. We all suffer. We all accept this suffering. We all have to work our way through it. And there are times when we are good at dealing with it, and there are times when we are bad at dealing with it. So that's a very shallow interpretation of another human being, in my opinion. We're all going to have our good days and our bad days, and we are always going to have our positive days and our negative days. Sometimes we're going to be genuinely happy, sometimes we're going to be genuinely sad, and both are okay as long as the latter doesn't last forever and the former isn't masking things that people should really be dealing with. So I don't know anyone who's genuinely happy all the time. I just don't. I know I have encountered people who sure gave the appearance. Doesn't mean they were. Because for a lot of my life, I was deeply depressed, and you probably wouldn't have been able to tell. Dancing on the edge of suicide every goddamn day, and you wouldn't have been able to tell. So some of us are just good at masking things. We slap on the pleasant face. We know the social cues because we've learned that that's what people want to see and hear. The phrase, "how you doing," is the most disingenuous statement ever, because people very rarely want to know how you're actually doing. And if you give someone an honest answer when they ask that, you were very unlikely to get a warm response when you're to that honesty, because they want you just to play the social game. And I'm not particularly good at playing the social game. Never have been. I wasn't raised with the cues to understand them. I learned them. I learned them being raised by a drunk, who learned them because he was raised by a drunk, who learned them because he was raised by a drunk. We learn the social cues we need to learn to survive. Sorry that this is a little dark one, that this didn't end on a positive note. Or it did. I guess depends how you want to look at it. At least I'm being honest. So, that's a tough one. And that is also the last question for episode 63. So, thank you for being here, and I hope that you will join me for episode 64.